Hey everybody, I'm here with Pops again. We're just reminiscing on the Texas road trip that we did. We wanted to really experience Texas, but one of the main reasons that we wanted to go there was to experience Texas barbecue.
Absolutely.
It's world renowned and people come to Texas to try the barbecue. And we did that as well. We went to 14 different places during our time in Texas. So we have some categories. We're going to share our favorites with you, but we kind of wanted to just jump into those overall experiences with the Texas barbecue. So what comes to mind when you think of barbecue, Pops?
Well, the first thing for me was that it does not disappoint. You know, there's no place we went to where we were like disappointed. It does not disappoint. But the second thing was there were times that we would taste something and we didn't know how to describe it. I remember an old commercial that used to say something was indescribably delicious. And Josh and I were often there where we're tasting something and the camera's on us. How do you want to comment about this? And we were like, I don't know what to say. It's just so amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to like say, you know, almost like a spiritual experience, but it's like you eat this and you're just like, I'm overwhelmed with the emotion and of the beauty of this thing that I'm eating. But one of the things that comes to mind when I think about Texas barbecue is just, it's basically an experience in the state of Texas. So when you go to some of these places like Goldie's or Franklin, I mean, you're waiting there for 3-4 hours sometimes, getting there in the early morning. I mean, the line was the experience. It was a great time. And we had so much fun. Just
people were great.
Yeah, just chatting with people, like having a donut together while we're waiting for 3 hours. I mean, and you meet great people and everyone's having fun too. No one's frustrated. Like
time goes quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, those 3 to 4 hours, it's like, it goes by like that. So if you want to experience some of these places, don't be afraid of those wait times. It was one of the highlights for us in the Texas barbecue experience.
Another thing about these barbecue places is that there's incredible variety. The way that it's cooked, the different types of meat, everything from pork belly to bologna in one place, believe it or not.
And we had pulled lamb at one place. Like, where do you get pulled lamb?
But the thing that we did too was that we tasted some of the variety, but because we wanted to do comparison, we tried to hit 3 things the same in every place. And that helped us when we were thinking through ranking places, but also just comparing the different types of ways that people would prepare food.
Yeah, and so a little bit more about how we actually selected these places too, because there's probably thousands of barbecue places in Texas, and obviously, you know, we only got to try 14, so take any of our thoughts with a grain of salt. But Texas Monthly puts out kind of like the official list of best barbecue in Texas. So we used a 2021 list, which was the most recent, and we went to 8 out of the top 10, and then another 5 or 6 that were in the top 50, but not in the top 10. And so that's kind of how we picked the places that we went to. And then just lastly for costs, so you know going into this, we've spent about $40 to $60 at most places that we went to. Everything's by the pound, depends on what types of things you get, depends on what types of sides you get. And note that if you get a beef rib, it's gonna be really pricey. We got it one time,
Delicious.
And that was it. I was shocked. I was like, what is this? It was a $55 beef rib. So if you really want to try a beef rib, pick the place you're going to try your beef rib at, because it's going to be expensive. But with that, let's jump into some of our top rankings for barbecue. We're going to go with brisket, ribs, and sausage, which is what we tried at every place. And then we're going to talk about sides, some of the biggest surprises for us, and then our overall favorite barbecue places. So let's jump into it. All right, first up, brisket. And for us, we really preferred the like more fatty, juicy side of the brisket, which is definitely the more unhealthy side, but it kind of melts in your mouth. You can cut it with a plastic fork. You don't have to put barbecue sauce on it. So what was your number 3, Pops?
But my number 3 was Snow's, but I got to give a shout out for number 4 also, which was Truth. I really enjoyed Truth barbecue, generally speaking. So my number 3 was Snow's.
Yeah, and Truth is in Houston. Snow's is in Lexington, which is about an hour outside of Austin, just so you get some understanding of this. But mine was Snow's as well, and Snow's was definitely one of the craziest experiences because that was the one where we had to get there at 4:30 in the morning. We were number 30 in line at 4:30 in the morning. I mean, you can see how much people love this because it's only open one day a week on Saturdays. And by the time probably 5:30 or 6 rolls around, there was 150 people or something sitting in this small town an hour outside of Austin with us waiting for this place to open. But the brisket there, I mean, it was incredible. Melt in your mouth.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
For me, number 2 was Goldie's. Now, Goldie's is the currently ranked number 1 place in the state for all barbecue, and it was fabulous, but that was my number 2.
Yeah, for number 2, I went with Franklin, which is kind of the one that everybody pretty much knows about in Texas. It's in Austin. People wait a really long line for that. They just had a really classic brisket. I enjoyed it a lot. Had just the right amount of spice, a salt and pepper type of flavor, and it was really good. And then for number 1, I went with Goldie's, which Pops went for number 2. The one thing that we talked about a lot with this is that we had Goldie's early on in our trip when we weren't super familiar with Texas barbecue, and it blew our minds, like the best thing we had ever eaten. But then we just continued to have good barbecue over and over and over again on the rest of the trip. So I kind of really wish I would have been able to have Goldie's one more time at the end just to see like how it compared, because to me it was basically like the pinnacle of barbecue when we were there. So what was your number 1?
My number 1, I went with Franklin. Franklin's was one of the last places we went to, and because it was one of the last places, I was eating it with tears in my eyes. That's how I was doing it. But Franklin's was incredibly good as well.
All right, next up we got ribs, and I'll start this one. I had to pick Cadillac for my number 3 on this one. That's the place that's just right outside of Dallas, and that's the place that we ordered the $55 beef rib at. So maybe I'm just saying it because I spent so much money on the ribs, but it was a pastrami rib. It was St. Patrick's Day. There was just something about eating this massive pastrami rib on St. Patrick's Day that, I'll never forget that experience. But the pork ribs themselves at Cadillac were incredible. They were juicy. They were full of flavor. So just by themselves, even without the beef rib, that was an incredible rib experience.
And number 3 for me was Truth. I thought Truth was very, very consistent, but their ribs were fabulous. Once again, I think in the video, when I put it up to taste it, I don't want to put it down to talk about it. I just want to keep eating it. It was pretty amazing.
There's a few times. I think at Goldie's too, I take a big video of Pops eating a rib, and then I look down, I look back up again, and the rib's already gone.
I don't want to put this rib down. It's just not taste it, but now I got it.
All right, so for my second one was Goldie's. We get into a little bit more different when we go to sausage and sides and stuff, but the classic kind of 3 for us were Goldie's, Franklin, and Snow's, and those are kind of what you see in this. But I went for Goldie's in second for best rib. The rib there was great. That's the one that you couldn't even finish fast enough, but just juicy and full of flavor.
Before I go for number 2, a shout out for number 4 was Pinkerton. That's the only place where that entered my list. But Pinkerton's was excellent for ribs. But my number 2 was Franklin. Once again, Franklin's was fabulous. And my number 1, once again, was Goldie's. Goldie's was just amazing.
Yeah, and my number 1 rib was Franklin as well, too. I was blown away by how good that was. Plus, the people who were next to us, they ordered a beef rib, and they gave us a little bit to try, so we didn't have to pay $55, so we got to try the beef rib.
So consider that. That was very nice for them to do that. When you're sitting next to somebody, you see that they haven't tried something you have.
Yeah, just see if you can get some. I mean, you spent 4 hours in line.
You can get some. Share with them.
What are you talking about? All right, so next up is best sausage, and we went with the house sausage everywhere. We wanted to just have the consistency because a lot of the places are doing different cheeses and things like that in the sausage, which are great, but be able to compare them, we figured that doing house sausage was the best way to do that. So for me, I have 5 on this one because I just had so many places that I liked the sausage at. First up was Pecan Lodge for me in Dallas. We went there right when we got off the airplane. And we got there right before they closed, but they just had a really good, full flavorful sausage there. Did you have 3 or do you have 5 too?
I have 4.
Okay, so for my number 4, I went with Salt Lick, which is outside of Austin in the Dripping Springs area. That's just a really fun, classic barbecue joint in Texas that you have to go to. They cook everything over this massive open fire that you can see right when you walk in. So cool barbecue experience is to go to Salt Lick. What's your number 4?
My number 4 was Franklin's. Once again, a great spot. My number 3 was Truth. Truth was kind of on my list across it. But just as an aside, before we go to 2 and 1, it was interesting that at times we were disappointed by the sausage. We expected a lot better.
That's true.
Across the places. So that was kind of a funny.
We're never disappointed by the brisket or the ribs. So for my number 3, I went with La Barbecue in Austin. I really liked the sausage there. It just had a good full flavor. They got that snap, which Pops always talks about the snap. For number 2, I went with Leroy and Lewis, which was a food truck. Pops didn't get to experience Leroy and Lewis. I went there with Amy when we were in Austin. That place is awesome. Like, if you're in Austin, you got to go to Leroy and Lewis. It's definitely a way non-traditional barbecue place. They don't even have brisket only like one day a week, but they have beef cheeks, which is kind of like their brisket. Incredible experience, and they have a really good sausage.
2 and 1 for me could have gone either way. 2 I had was Cadillac, and 1 I had as Interstellar. And the sausage there was fabulous. But one of the best things about both of those places were the people who were working there. Knowledgeable, friendly, helpful, great to talk to. Really, really enjoyed the staff at both Cadillac and Interstellar.
Yeah, my number 1 for sausage was Interstellar. Honestly, like, if you don't want to have the wait at Franklin when you're in Austin, Interstellar is probably second best. Like, you just full experience for barbecue if you're visiting Austin and you don't want to wait. We got to Interstellar like 15 minutes after they opened. We waited about 30, 40 minutes maybe, and probably if you get there 15 minutes before they open, you probably don't even have to wait that long. But it's an awesome all-around barbecue place, and that was my number 1 for sausage. All right, so now we're jumping into our favorite sides, and sides are an interesting thing in the barbecue experience in Texas because you have the ones that just do classic, which is, the coleslaw, potato salad, and beans, and then you have a lot of these places that are doing really unique things with the sides, which we really enjoyed because you're going and you're having this consistent barbecue experiences, but it's fun when they're kind of getting a little crazy with the sides. So jumping into sides for me, my number 4 was Panther City. They have an elote brisket. So I love elote, which is that kind of Mexican street corn, but throwing some brisket on top of it, I mean, how can that possibly be bad?
My number 4 would probably, or 3 would probably be at Pecan Lodge. They had this thing called the Hot Mess, which maybe it was just because, once again, I got off the airplane, but it was a baked sweet potato with barbecue on top of that and cheese. And the combination of the sweet and the salty was just really nice.
My number 3 was the beets and kale side at Interstellar. I couldn't even have Pops try that. He hates both of those things so much.
Not be sorry.
But it was so good. I ate the entire thing. I even told the pitmaster, like, man, your beets and kale side is so good, and he agreed with me. He was very excited about that side. So get beets and kale at Interstellar.
The one thing that I loved at Goldie's was that they had jalapeno cheese grits, which was a really nice accompaniment to the other barbecue stuff we were eating.
My next side was at 2M, which is outside of San Antonio, and they had a chicharrones mac and cheese. You get that really hearty, kind of creamy mac and cheese, but you throw some chicharrones on top for that nice crunch and that little bit of the salty flavor. I don't know. For me, that was pretty strong. Plus, they also had an awesome corn side there as well. And as you can tell from my number 4, I love anything with corn in it. So 2M outside of San Antonio, great sides.
Well, and since you mentioned 2M, one of the unique things that they had was that I think it's called Oaxacan cheese sausage. That was incredible. Not a side. Probably my top side of these, kind of a salady kind of thing, was at Cadillac, and they had this apple broccoli salad, like a fresh broccoli apple salad, which once again, the sweet and kind of the crunchiness of the broccoli was something that kind of was a good antithesis to the barbecue, which was oftentimes, as you want, a little fatty, a little salty. So that was a really nice compliment.
My number 1 side was at Truth, and it was the Brussels sprouts and then the Tots casserole. They both were just incredible sides. The Brussels sprouts were cooked really well, and then the Tots casserole, I mean, it's just full of flavor, creamy. I do, though, have to throw out one additional recommendation, and it's kind of not a side, but it kind of is. And that's at Leroy and Lewis. They have a cauliflower burnt end. So like the burnt end is, the kind of the charred piece of the meat. But for people who are vegetarian, they make a cauliflower one. And man, that was incredible. I wouldn't even been bummed out if I was just eating cauliflower burnt ends at Leroy and Lewis. So that's a honorable mention. Before jumping into our best overall barbecue, we want to talk a little bit about the things that surprised us on our barbecue experience. So first up, what you got, Pops?
I mean, the whole thing surprised us. We were just shocked by everything. The first thing I think I would say on my list, maybe number 3, was there's a barbecue joint that's on the top 50, and it's called the Guest Family Barbecue, and I think it's about to move up. But they had these amazing deviled eggs that were just incredible. And that was the only place we went to, I think, that had deviled egg.
I don't remember seeing deviled eggs anymore.
And they were fabulous.
They were. My first surprise was at Goldie's. They actually make their own bread there. So one of the staples of Texas barbecue is that they'll always just throw down a couple pieces of white bread so you can eat that however you want with your meal. But at Goldie's, they took the time to actually make their white bread, and their bread was good. So you go to a barbecue place, the barbecue's good, the bread's good. Like, how do you beat that?
And that was interesting too, because when we talked to some of the pit masters, one of the things they said is, you go to a barbecue place that make their own bread. How unusual is that? So that was really unusual. At Interstellar, they had this thing called pork belly peach, which was this peach glaze on this pork belly, which was really amazing.
Yeah, they kind of described it as like meat candy, right? Isn't that what they called it? It definitely was. That was a good description. It was meat candy. My other surprise also at Interstellar was the desserts. There was honestly really good desserts at basically all the barbecue places. So if you see, banana pudding or something on there, we heard the one at Goldie's was really good, but it sold out before we got to try it. At Interstellar, they had a chocolate rice pudding to go along with their banana pudding, and man, it was so good. It was just so full of flavor. Both of those desserts were great. Plus, they had really good pie at Franklin too. I mean, it wasn't made by them. They had a local woman who made the pie and brought it in each morning, I believe. But man, that was some good pie there.
One other thing too that I was interested in, I always love to get beans. And one of the bean sides that surprised me of all the places there was Pinkerton's beans. So if you go to Pinkerton's, get their baked beans. They were really, really good. But the final surprise was that when we went to Snow's, we asked, when you go to these places, one of the things you ask about is what's the first thing that gets sold out? Because that kind of gives you an indication of what the most popular thing is. And surprisingly at Snow's, the first thing that gets sold out often is the chicken. And so we thought, Josh was like, we got to get the chicken. Well, the chicken was incredible. It was just amazing. And so that was a huge surprise. We loved it.
Yeah, that was my number one surprise as well. Like, I've never had chicken that good in my entire life. I didn't even know chicken could be that good, It's like, I love chicken, but like that chicken was next level. And we tried a lot of turkey at different places, but we weren't really a fan of turkey that much. Like, it was always good, but it was kind of just not as next level as some of those. I will say though, I was really impressed with the turkey at Truth. You might disagree with me, and you might love the turkey at some of these other places that we went to as well. All right, now the moment you've been waiting for. Two people who are not from Texas and who only tried 14 places, our favorite barbecue in the state of Texas. Feel free to disagree and leave it in the comments. But for us, here's the top 5. I'm starting it off with Truth in Houston. Just a great all-around place. Everything from the sides to the barbecue was good there.
Number 5 for me is Snow's. And number 5 is Fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, Snow's is number 5.
Yeah, I got Snow's at number 4. The complete experience from just waiting there, hanging out with the pitmaster who was incredible, and eating their barbecue was a great experience.
So for me, number 4 was Interstellar. I loved the food. It was amazing, but the people were incredible as well. The people who worked there, they were great.
Yeah, that was my number 3. Pops is just taking my spots right before I get a chance to say them. But yeah, Interstellar, incredible barbecue experience. If you're in Austin, go there.
Number 3 for me was Franklin's. Franklin's, once again, was amazing. Really, really good food. And they had an interesting sauce that was kind of like coffee-based, which is interesting. You might want to try as well.
What the heck, Pops? That's my number 2. Oh. You're just taking all my glory. Well, my number 2 was Franklin. It's a good experience, and it lives up to the hype. I didn't think it was going to live up to the hype. Absolutely does. It was worth the wait.
So number 2 for me is Truth, like I say. And Truth was a huge surprise. I think it was rated, obviously, in the top 10. But it was tough for me between Truth and my number 1. My number 1 was Fabulous, but Truth was right there, and it was consistently good across all the different categories we were evaluating barbecue joints on.
All right, and so 2 honorable mentions before we jump into number 1. What are your 2 honorable mentions?
My 2 honorable mentions are first, Pinkerton. Pinkerton had some really interesting sides, and the food was excellent as well. And my other honorable mention, and these things could have easily been moved up to a different part of the list, was Cadillac. I loved Cadillac.
My 2 honorable mentions, first I have Leroy and Lewis in Austin. That's an incredible place to eat. The food there is just top notch. The beef cheeks, like, you're never gonna eat anything like you eat those beef cheeks at Leroy and Lewis. And my second honorable mention is 2M. outside of San Antonio. I was really impressed with the barbecue there. Everything was great. Definitely a great place to go if you're in San Antonio. Well, since we already did honorable mentions, what's your number one, Pops? Drum roll. Here we go.
My number one was Goldie's. Goldie's is ranked number one, and it was the indescribably delicious place where you take a bite and you're just like, I don't even know what to say other than this is like one of the most amazing foods I've ever tasted. So Goldie's for me was number one.
Yeah, Goldie's was number one for both of us. And that's what we were saying earlier is like, I love to try it again just to see how it compared after all of the different barbecue we had. But I can't imagine I'd be disappointed. I mean, that was an amazing place. And the guy who was waiting in line the first time and got there at 4:30, and it was like his third time being at Goldie's. So it was such a good experience that he came back again and again and again. And I could say that for myself too. Like, I don't know if I'd wait another 4 hours because there's so much good barbecue in the state, but I definitely wasn't disappointed by spending that much time waiting for that good of food. You left some food on the table?
No, I took it with me.
And with that, our barbecue list has come to a close. Please tell us what your favorite is in the description. It was crazy. Like everywhere we go, people had different spots, right?
Yeah. And once again, what's your favorite child?
Yeah.
We're just incredible places.
Yeah, I mean, and Pops wrote down that, you know, the time of the day you could go, it's like you could get meat that's drier. So your experience at one of these places may be different than our experience at one of these places. Or you could get meat from a different part of the rib, you know, or any of these things all can change the experience that you have. So you might have had an amazing experience at one of these that we didn't have or something like that. Plus, everybody has their favorite spots. Like you talk to somebody, they're like, you got to go to this place, which is 10 minutes from my house, and it's the best place to get barbecue. And I think that's what we like about Texas. It's like one time we stayed at the Texas Chainsaw motel outside of, you know, I don't even remember where we were at. But like they made barbecue there and it was great.
It was okay.
It was great barbecue. These were our favorite spots, but we definitely want to know what your favorite spots were. So leave those in the comments and check out all of our Texas content right here. All right, so we got a sample of Bucky's brisket because we figured we had to do a full barbecue review.
Here we go. Bucky's brisket. It's actually pretty darn good. It's actually really pretty good. They say they usually put the sauce on it, but
Goldie's level?
no. But I would not turn this down in California. I'll tell you what.
Thanks for watching.
More food reviews, Pop?
More food reviews.
We'll see you on the next one.